最近売り上げ落ちてるしな。
When all else fails, you can just blame it on the economy. Culprit for this one featured Momoko at the beach, and yeah, that was about it. I mean, this will be important for later in the episode, as they usually are, but still, this is definitely one of the more unassuming pre-episode ambles. Well, I already see this is Dekado's least favorite episode. The episode proper opened on a slow day at the Mahodo, with them apparently only having gotten 3 customers that day. Concerned that it was because of their product, they sampled their wares and found nothing wrong with it. Though as we'll see, it was likely because they didn't make something to match with the hot summer season, but more on that later. Anyway, they ended up getting 2 false customer alarms with Momoko and then the maid of their next patisserie examiner. They learned that their examiner would be someone named Masha Prima, who they were unfamiliar with, but they would still put their best foot forward. Thus, they went to the witch's world after one stock animation, and Oppu kind of joining out of nowhere. Like, I get that she's probably busy with her idol work, but still kind of weird that she wasn't in the last scene if we were just going to jump right into the next one. Whatever, on their way to the examiner, they expounded about how apparently she was like a celebrity in this world. Can also assume that she went to a few certain parties in her time. They arrived at her mansion and were asked to wait for her, so they waited and waited and waited, and yeah, again, this is very typical celebrity behavior. Understandably not willing to put up with Majo Kilmer, they barged into her room. Well, she certainly sounds like a celebrity of the washed up variety. Not even really kidding, as on top of playing the OG Sailor Venus, this VA has also done a lot of work providing the Japanese dub for big Hollywood celebrities like Sandra Bullock, Julia Roberts, Angelina Jolie, and Catherine Zeta-Jones, which just makes me wonder if her casting was on purpose. I mean, she certainly seems like an amalgamation of all of those ladies and their issues. This included some unstable eating habits and a reliance on caffeine, which actually was some pretty clever foreshadowing. But yeah, because of her lack of proper nutrients, in particular sugar for the brain, she just half-heartedly gave them a baking challenge with the conditions that it had to be a seasonal baked good that would be easy to eat even for someone without much of an appetite and be on the less sweet side.
We serve food here, sir.
Though thankfully, she did give them a week to figure things out. Of course, with a week, Doremi figured that they had it in the bag. However, as they discussed it, the Ojamajo realized that Majo Prima's request involved a lot of conflicting elements. Most notably, the fact that it was currently summer meant that they were limited to colder treats like ice cream and shaved ice, which don't really utilize oven. Well, in cases like this, the best option is just to become the ultimate power-up for Shoma. Though to be fair, the heavy usage of ice cream would likely go over the easy-to-eat part of Majo Prima's request, so it was out of the question too. I mean, it's not as though they were going to make a treat that was relatively close to that in concept, right? Anyway, they wisely decided to do a little reconnaissance on their client to get a better idea about her personal preferences. So 3 of them went to the witch's world, and we didn't really get to see anything, and instead they just reported back to the Ojamajo. Boo! Like seriously, I think it would have been interesting to learn a little bit more about the lifestyle of a celebrity in the witch's world and have it parallel with the real life difficulties of many celebrities like models and actresses who do have to go on strenuous crash diets like Majo Prima's. Hell, even this little recap was probably one of the most interesting parts of the episode. But yeah, the main takeaway was that the lady was not into sweets due to worrying about her figure the majority of the time. Thus, the Ojamajo's options were running thin along with their 1 week. Sounds about as good a plan as any. Yeah! However, there was a much more pressing issue that they had to immediately deal with, which was buying more barley tea for Doremi, which she had been drinking throughout the episode. And yeah, someone who's actually drunk that stuff in Japan, it's okay. I mean, it's got a bit of a weird aftertaste that makes me honestly prefer just regular old black tea, but we don't judge addictions in these parts. Anyway, Hazuki and Momoko volunteered to go buy some, and thanks to their brooms, they managed to finish their task so quick that Momoko figured that they could just kill some time by going to the beach from the cold opener.
Hey, but why though?
Yeah, this is a bit of a weird turn, and I don't mean so much for the fact that the two decided to go to the beach, as there is a point to it that we'll get to in just a second, but more on the fact that this is suddenly a Momoko and Hazuki episode. I mean, obviously, the former was getting a spotlight, so it makes sense, but why is it that she was suddenly getting paired with Hazuki? Was it because she was stressing out a little more than the other Ojamajo? Because really, all of them have been on edge, and for good reason, so it does feel a little weird to suddenly pair her up with Momoko. That said, this was a beautifully animated scene, like serious compliments to a veteran like Toshie Kawamura. I mean, the ocean water alone was just gorgeous. But yeah, the message of the day was pretty obvious.
If at first you don't succeed, blame it on your parent.
No, of course, it was to take a break every so often to clear your head, and you might find a solution to your problems, which the two managed to do. Back with Doremi, she was thirsting hard for her precious barley, and decided to just use up some of their very expensive magic dust from a couple episodes to make some out of thin air.
何しょうもないことに魔法使ってんねん
I mean, compared to everything else in this season, that was probably one of the more practical applications of y'all's magic. But yeah, eventually Momoko and Hazuki returned with their idea, which turned out to be clams. Oh, of course, make cookies out of clam juice. Actually, they just used the general shape of the shellfish and made ice cream sandwiches. So, yeah, this is basically a close relative to ice cream cakes, as the sandwich and cookies are basically little cakes, but I guess the serving sizes can be a little bit more reasonable, as they can be adjusted too. In fact, the same could be said about the flavors, which they decided to make a little more attuned to their client, as Doremi decided to briefly become a protagonist. Thus, they made some very brown cookies for Major Prima, which of course turned out to be coffee ice cream sandwiches, which should pass any challenge, as coffee ice cream is the absolute best, but it also fulfilled the less sweet condition, along with giving her an extra burst of caffeine. With that, they passed her test when she was seemingly barely awake. Yeah, I'll admit, the comedy in this outing was pretty solid overall, though the examiner also seemed to be a little more lucid when reporting it to the queen, so it's hard to get a grasp on her character really. But whatever, the episode ended with Doremi trying to make some more tea and Hazuki and Momoko laughing over their inside joke. This was a bit of an awkward episode that I think I liked, but not as much as I could have. Like, there are some good ideas here, like just the premise of a celebrity witch, and how the Ojamajo figured out what they should make for her was kind of clever. It's really all about how it was executed, which just felt incomplete. To me, this episode was the definition of schizophrenic. At some points, it felt like they were going to develop the Examiner, who actually has an interesting concept and setup as a celebrity witch with abnormal eating habits, but then it suddenly becomes all about Momoko and Hazuki, even though the latter barely got any focus in the episode until that point. And while I would have preferred if they had just focused on the former, I also wouldn't mind if the episode had just been about Hazuki and Momoko working together to figure out what they could do for their exam. When it's both, the episode just ends up feeling kind of unfocused, as Major Prima doesn't feel like a fleshed out character, and therefore seeing them pass her exam feels a little empty. Meanwhile, I'm not totally sure why Hazuki and Momoko were paired together other than maybe having similar colors. Now, to be fair, I think I get what they were trying to teach with this episode, in that sometimes you just have to slow things down a little in order to get to the best and well thought out solution to a problem. And again, what little celebrity stuff we got was actually pretty intriguing. On top of it, the comedy with the Ojamajo need to deal with the stoner examiner was pretty funny, so I don't really want to say this is a bad episode overall, just not a really great one either due to the lack of focus. Thus, I guess it balances out to just okay. I suppose like this episode, it just makes me feel very wishy-washy. Thanks for watching, and thankfully, I don't have to work on a bunch of videos this week. I mean, we'll still try to record and get a certain overview done, but if it's not, it'll at least be on track to being so. So, look forward to it. Until then, though, farewell for now, my friends, and, since I'm on the beach, I may as well do some clam digging.